the Philippines, China, Indonesia, and even as further south, southern hemisphere of Oceania, New Zealand and Australia is the great flyway of water birds, shorebirds, seabirds, called the East Asia Australasian flyway. And you can see the Yellow Sea coral region is literally a hub of that flyway, as over 50 species of birds with a total number of 2 million. They have to feed themselves in springtime in this flyway, and some will return every autumn before they breed in the further north hemisphere and breed in the and winter in the tropical area, including Indonesia, Philippines, and this huge destruction of their habitat is really almost a death toll. And as a result, science indicate that some of the longest migration birds, like bar-tailed godwits, red nose, green nose, they are declining at an alarming rate, 5 to 9% per year for their populations using the Asia-Australia flyway. And because of these reasons, our domestic breeding program gave the sea cucumber pond aquaculture a red card to avoid. And for our efforts, so the China Seafood Sustainability Assessment, you probably found a big similarity with the Seafood Watch. So actually, we are mirroring the Seafood Watch efforts, and we are learning the Seafood Watch model and trying to adapt it within China's circumstances and needs. And our theory of change is rather easy. We use simple. We use science and fact-based assessment to publish reports and education materials to empower the consumers to make the right choices. And we are hopeful that their better understanding would turn into care, and then care into action, and they can join force with us to work with decision makers, with green-minded industrial leaders and the media. Together, we could push or drive the production and the consumption of seafood, both farm and wild, to a higher, more environmentally friendly and socially responsible manner. And we are our program is in existence for only 2 years, and this COVID-19 year brought us some unexpected challenges and slowed our progress down. But nonetheless, we are committed to working with you all to drive the ongoing sustainable movement in Asia, to make it a truly global environmental movement. Thank you. So that's all.
Thank you, Sonling Wang, for sharing with us. I'm going to conclude your presentation in Bahasa for a bit. So, teman-teman semuanya, tadi Sonling menjelaskan bahwa cara mendapatkan seafood enggak cuma dengan cara ditangkap langsung, seperti yang sudah Shelly jelaskan, ada beberapa metode untuk tangkap langsung, tapi juga bisa dibudidayakan dengan istilah aquaculture. Jadi aquaculture ini budidaya pemeliharaan atau produksi ikan dan hewan air lainnya, dan juga spesies tanaman di bawah kondisi yang dikendalikan. Tadi contohnya si cucumber ditaruh di kolam seperti itu, lalu dibudidayakan. Kenapa harus si cucumber? Karena dalam case-nya Sonling itu lumayan banyak demand-nya, kebutuhannya, nggak cuma untuk makanan, tapi chemical dan yang lainnya juga. Seperti itu. Okay, we are going to move to the third speaker. We have Patrick Go from US Fishery. Patrick leads a small team that works with companies, universities, and NGOs and government to bring new resource for sustainable fisheries in Philippines. Prior to joining Fishery, he worked in partnership and program management roles on clean energy, disaster recovery, and natural resources management project with WWF Philippines and the Asian Development Bank, or ADB. He holds a master in environment management from the Ateneo de Manila University. Please give virtual applause to Patrick. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dia, and thank you, Shelly and Songlin. Very eye-opening presentations. Yeah, so I'm just going to talk very briefly about the blue swing crab in the Philippines and our partnership with the Monterey Bay Aquarium and a number of other organizations. Yeah, so I'll start actually just with a quick overview of the fishery situation in the Philippines. So the Philippines has been called by at least one marine scientist as the center of shorefish biodiversity. And of course, the Philippines, along with Indonesia and a number of other countries, are part of what we call the Coral Triangle. So really one of the most biodiverse marine environments in the world. And from that great diversity and abundance, we actually are able to catch about 4 million metric tons of fish from the waters. This is both from capture fisheries and from aquaculture, and that brings about $2 billion into the Philippine economy. But of course, beyond the economic value, fish is actually very important in terms of food security and livelihoods in the Philippines. We see that actually fish provides more than half of the protein requirements of people in the Philippines. And then, of course, the majority of the population, I guess, very similarly to Indonesia, probably is living in coastal areas, so dependent on the natural resources of the ocean. We have quite a number of challenges, of course, in the Philippines, and I guess similarly in other parts of Asia as well. That illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, like Scott mentioned at the start, is a major problem. And then an early estimate said that we might lose about over $1 billion worth of fish stock every year because of that. And as we know, that a lot of these fisheries are overfished, so the amount of fishers and fishing pressure is greater than the natural ability of the fish stocks to sustain themselves. So I work with a program right now called Fishery, and Fishery actually has two main objectives. One is to reduce threats to marine biodiversity, so IUU fishing and overfishing, and to also achieve a 10% increase in what we call fish biomass. So that actually leads to benefits both in terms of the fish that we're able to catch in the long term, and also the fish that remain in the water. So those are the twin objectives of the program. Ultimately, what we hope to do is actually benefit about 2 million people living in these areas by improving the management of their marine habitats, about 2.5 million hectares worth in the areas where we're working. So we're a national program, but we focus on three key sites. So we have South Negros is one, the Calamianes Island Group, which is actually a major source of live grouper and sea cucumber, as Songlin had mentioned just in his last presentation, and the Visayan Sea is a third. And this is where, as you'll see here, where we catch quite a lot of the blue swimming crab that comes from the Philippines. Blue swimming crab, or BSC, maybe just for short, is one of our major export commodities from the Philippines. We harvest about 30,000 metric tons per year in the country, and this is all capture. This is all wild caught. We haven't quite figured out how to culture this yet. But from that. From this amount of BSC, we are able to export about $70 million worth just from this one species alone. And from that, from that export value, we actually see that the area where we're working in, the Visayan Sea, produces about 40% of that. So it is the largest single producer of blue swimming crab in the country. So BSC is caught in a couple of different ways, but by and large, this is what you would call a small-scale fishery. So basically, these are caught by fishers going out in small boats. I guess this is familiar to some of the guys from Indonesia and maybe from the Maldives as well. 1 to 2 persons in a small motorized boat. They don't go very far from shore, maybe 5 kilometers or so. So these are not caught in very deep waters. So they're quite shallow, and they're caught, as you can see here, using entangling nets or gill nets, right? As like what Shelly showed earlier. So again, these are small enough to be carried on a small boat, but can be quite long also. So these can be a couple of kilometers long, actually, worth of nets. Right. So aside from entangling nets, we also have, as you can see here, crab pots. So like the traps that Shelly showed earlier as well, but these are only about about that big, and each boat, as you can see here, can carry about actually several hundred of these crab pots. Lift nets over here are another one, but much less common than the first two. Okay, so this is the supply chain of the blue swimming crab. So this is what happens after this 30,000 metric tons are caught, right? It can be a little bit tangled up, but very, very simply put, the crab, after it's caught, is consolidated, it's gathered, and then is cooked, and then it's actually picked by hand by groups. And then is actually pasteurized and canned and then sold, to different places around the world. But the vast majority actually goes to the United States, actually already in these essentially in cans, right? So this is basically how the blue swimming crab goes from fisher, and it creates a lot of value for different for other people in the supply chain, and then ultimately gets to the consumer. Unfortunately, of course, the main concern that we have is that that BSC is actually rated a void by Seafood Watch, actually, and you can see here that both using entangling nets and crab pots, they're both rated a void for a couple of reasons that you can see here. So for one, as Shelly mentioned, it's the impact on the species. We simply don't really know enough about the blue swimming crab at this point, and what we do know suggests that it is a highly overfished species. Right. Number two, impacts on other species. Because like these sorts of fishing gears can be hazardous to turtles, to sharks and rays as well. They are at present rated red. However, I guess it's also partly because we don't really understand enough at this point about whether or not there is a major impact that this is currently rated red. And the third is actually management effectiveness. And this actually means that, if you know enough about the stock and you know enough about the impacts on other species, what are we actually doing about it, right? So in our case, we have a management plan in place, but right now, we've seen that there isn't the actual compliance with this plan has really been somewhat inconsistent in the past. I guess the one good spot here is that we don't really have, because these are gillets and crab pots, they don't have a major impact on the habitat and ecosystem. So that's less of a concern, given everything. Under the Fishery program, we've looked at and of course in close partnership with the Seafood Watch program of the Monterey Aquarium, we actually looked at establishing a partnership among the organizations that you see here, of course, we have from our government side is the Bureau of Fisheries of our government, USAID, of course, which is the funder of our fishery program. We have these two groups. So this is the Association of Crab Processors and Saravia Blue Crab, which is also a major processor in the country. So these are both groups that buy and can the crab. Seafood Watch, of course, and Thai Union. So one of the major crab buyers in the U.S. And they basically sell it under the Chicken of the Sea brand, and of course also directly to retailers, to hotels and restaurants for food service, etc. So these groups have all formed a partnership. In our case, in the Philippines, to actually do two things. One is to make the implementation of our new national management plan more effective. And number two is actually to improve that avoid rating to at least a good alternative, or even hopefully someday to a green rating. And it's a lucky thing that these two outcomes are very much tied together. Ultimately, what we want to see is that we are actually able to achieve a sustainable BSC fishery in the Visayan Sea that benefits both the fishers and the industry. And so, just my last couple of slides, what do we do as part of this partnership? So number one is to actually build the information base. So like I said earlier, our first concern here is that we simply don't know enough. We don't have enough good data about the fishery. So we're working on that with both the government and the industry. One of the things we do is that we actually have trained some fishers to capture data themselves on the fishery. When there are egg-bearing or I guess pregnant crabs, in the water, when those major times are, when you catch a lot of juveniles, when are the best seasons to actually catch the crab in larger sizes, which is one of the key things that we want to do, is to make it that we catch bigger crabs in this case, so that are no longer juvenile. So we are looking to help with our partners to build the data that we need to manage the fishery better. We're hoping to understand what the risk is to endangered, threatened, and protected species. So like turtles in this case. Sharks and rays are also a possible concern in the Visayan Sea. So we're trying to understand what the risk is like right now, and then if there is a major risk, how then are we going to be able to address that? Like, are we going to need to change, like Shelly was saying, like the kind of gear that we use to actually catch BSC? Or are there other ways to do it? I mean, are there certain times of the year, for example, where we might need to close the fishery to actually enable these species to to not be caught? We work on different government and industry cooperation initiatives. So we were working, of course, with both the local government and the national government to actually implement, as we said, the management plan. But the key thing here is actually that we really need the industry to come in and support this management plan. And so far, actually, with all of the major crab processors on board, I think we'll be we can be successful in that. In that the industry will help the government actually roll out this plan, right? Both on the national and on the local sides. We work on community engagement and information campaigns, right? And sometimes that's actually looking at working with fishers and getting them to actually cooperate and work together on sort of the measures that we need to do to manage the resource. We have here like a draft of one of the communication materials that we need to distribute in fishing communities to help them understand, what the management plan says and what the best practices are. And sometimes it means that you have to walk in a parade in a very crowded urban area with a crab on your head to educate consumers on what this actually means, right? What the blue swim crab sustainability should mean to them as consumers as well. Yeah, lastly, this might be something a little less immediately obvious, right? But a lot of work the work that we do actually deals with gender equity and climate change. So making sure that that women have a voice in the management of the resource. In this case, particularly because women actually make up the majority of people working in the cooking, the picking, and the processing of BSC. So we want to make sure that they also are able to have a voice in this in the management of blue swimming crab, and to understand that in the long term, like how do we reduce the vulnerability of this resource to climate change impacts as well. And that's something that we're just starting to understand right now. And yeah, but these actually have a lot to do with managing the resource as well. Yeah, so that's I guess just really the short story of the blue swimming crab in the Philippines and our partnership, and we're happy to talk about this more later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's really insightful. I'm going to conclude your presentation in bahasa for a bit. Jadi teman-teman semuanya di Indonesia, di Filipina itu ada salah satu primadona seafood namanya blue swim crab yang setiap tahunnya ditangkap sekitar 30.000 pieces per tahun, dan itu nggak cuma untuk konsumsi lokal tapi juga diekspor. Lalu Patrick menjelaskan bagaimana caranya Patrick dan dengan programnya untuk membuat suatu manajemen sehingga lebih sustain dalam penangkapan tapi juga tidak terlalu berpengaruh untuk ekonomikalnya. Jadi dua-duanya tetap jalan. Seperti itu kurang lebih. Oke. To all speakers, thank you very much for sharing. If I can pretend scale my knowledge, it's like already gained like 10 kg by the time listening all your presentation. Thank you very much, really insightful. So moving along, now for the surprise, we are going to put the audience into breakout room. So for you all, you don't need to press any button, you just sit back and relax, and the IT team will help assign you to move to the breakout room. Once we are in there, we are going to start discussion. I would like to invite Mbak Vini dan Pak Edwin to join us for this discussion. Halo Mbak.
Halo.
How are you?
Good. How are you, Dea?
Good Mbak. Pak Erwin, Bapak with us?
I'm in front of the sun. Still happy to meet you all.
Okay, great. So, okay. Sorry, I did mistake. So we just stay in main room, and me, Mbak Vini, and Pak Erwin will start the discussion. Maybe Mbak Vini, you can start.
Okay, terima kasih, Dea. So we are going to have discussion here now. Kita bisa diskusi, we can discuss in bahasa Indonesia. Jadi kalau teman-teman bisa lihat saya dengan baik. Oke, kita hari ini punya 3 pertanyaan, tapi kita akan mulai satu persatu. Kalau misalnya nanti kita selesai dengan pertanyaan pertama, kita bisa lanjut ke pertanyaan kedua dan seterusnya. Tapi kalau waktunya tidak terlalu mencukupi, kita cukup selesaikan di pertanyaan terakhir. Tapi sebelum saya mulai, saya bisa tahu dulu nggak teman-teman yang ada di sini ini dari mana aja? Halo, ada yang bisa Brilian Ainun Muzaki? Brilian Ainun Muzaki bisa di-unmute nggak? Halo, Brilian Ainun Muzaki. Halo. Oh, tidak ada. Oke, kita punya Ibu Desi Maka P2 ini, Ibu Dr. Desi Maka P2 ini salah satu dosen Perikanan di Universitas Samratulangi. Ibu Desi, selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi Mbak Vini, selamat pagi. Thank you everyone.
Thank you Ibu Desi for joining us.
Terima kasih Mbak Vini.
It's a pleasure for us to have you. So Ibu Desi used to also help us 2 years ago in Manado during our workshop on the Seafood Watch. So we also have, kita juga punya teman yang lain. Ini saya panggil satu-satu. Ada Simon Siregar. Simon Siregar, bisa di unmute. Simon Siregar.
Ya, halo.
Halo, Simon Siregar. Dari mana kah?
Dari Bandung, Ibu.
Dari Bandung.
Ya.
Dari kampus atau?
Kampus, Ibu.
Kampus apa?
Universitas Telkom.
Universitas Telkom. Wow. Tapi bisa ngikutin tadi Mas presentasinya?
Lumayan, Mbak, Ibu.
Alhamdulillah. Super. Oke. Jadi kita sekarang akan coba diskusikan berdasarkan presentasi Shelly, presentasi Songlin, presentasi Patrick. The first question that we are going to discuss here is tadi kita sudah belajar tentang ada 3 pilar concept towards sustainability yang dijelaskan oleh Shelly. 3 pilar konsep ini terkait yang pertama itu sustainable environment atau sustainable ecosystem, kemudian yang kedua social responsibility, dan terkait yang ketiga economic viability atau keberlanjutan ekonomi. Kalau dari perspektif Indonesia, ketiga pilar ini kira-kira seperti apa ya? Kalau dari perspektif kita di Indonesia, ada yang bisa, boleh di videonya di on kan semua nggak?
Mbak Vini,
Yes.
ada yang menarik nih, ada Michaela, mahasiswa Indonesia sedang studi marine environment di University of Bordeaux, Prancis. Aku coba unmute ya.
Oke. Halo Michaela. Halo Michaela.
Halo.
Hai.
Halo.
Michaela, mahasiswa Indonesia yang sedang studi di Bordeaux, Prancis.
Iya.
Ambil
Iya,
studi apa, Michaela?
Saya ambil marine environment.
Ya.
Konsentrasinya lebih ke oceanografi sebenarnya.
Oke,
Iya.
nggak apa-apa. Tadi aja teman dari teknik Telkom. Oke. So, Michaela punya pendapat apa nih terkait dengan konsep 3 pilar terkait sustainability?
Terkait sustainability ya.
Ya.
Kalau misalnya lebih ke lingkungan perikanan ya. Kalau kita bicara tentang lingkungan perikanan sih, yang aku tangkap itu lebih ke arah bycatch ya. Lebih ke tangkapan ketika proses menangkap ikan itu sendiri itu kan ada biasanya ada biota-biota lain yang ketangkep. Nah, kalau misalnya masalah sustainability sih biasanya lebih mengarah ke situ kalau aku lihatnya.
Oke. Berarti terkait dengan sustainable ecosystem antara lain ya, diambil contohnya tadi tentang bycatch, endangered and protected animals gitu ya. Banyak sekali yang tertangkap. Artinya kita harus menjaga agar tidak terjadi bycatch selama proses penangkapan ikan atau selama proses fishing gitu ya.
Iya.
Oke. Ada lagi yang lain? Ada yang mau volunteer atau saya langsung unmute? Ada? Silahkan. Saya lihat ini ada nama Ketut Edi Danusugita. Ketut Edi Danusugita.
Ya, saya Ketut Edi dari Politeknik Negeri Bali.
Oh, ya.
Actually, I'm international administration staff. But before, I was work at Singapore Airlines Cargo.
Oh.
Before the Bali bombing 2002, we uplifting tuna, mostly tuna from Bali. Daily could be around 20 tons. Daily before Ibu Susi, our previous minister. So in this case, I would like to ask actually, maybe it could be the three of the presenter, I mean the keynote speaker today. Is there any quotas given to the fishermen? I mean that mostly catching resulting overfishing. Like in Philippines and China, just now I saw, and also the first from Sally, today I mean the fishermen have permitted catching quotas. And also, is there an official to control the catching? So mainly I would like to know about it, because even though I'm not in fisheries or oceanography, marine biology, no, but I love to watch like in BBC, like a wicked tuna. They catch tuna, mostly they catch tuna, or like deadliest catch. Sometimes they crab, sometimes they get shark also, or sometimes they get others also. I heard that they have quotas, but in terms like in Philippines just now, from Patrick, right? So is there any quotas from the fishermen when they do the catching? Like I saw on that television. I just saw on the television. That's why I joined this one. I would like to know more about fishermen, even though it's not my, what do you call, wherever field of.
The field, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ketut. In Bali ya, Pak?
Yeah, in Bali. Jimbaran.
Okay. Jimbaran, okay. Nice seafood.
Yeah, that's right. Seafood.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Well, actually, we are going to open the Q&A session after this. We'll keep this question for later on after our discussion, ya Pak Ketut. And I'm sure that maybe Patrick or Songlin or even Shelley have something to answer to this question. Thank you very much, Pak Ketut. It's very important comments to this and questions. Any other who want to give his thought about the three pillar concept? Jadi apa sih sebetulnya dari perspektif Indonesia ya? Kalau untuk di Indonesia itu terkait dengan bagaimana menjaga kelestarian ekosistem atau kelestarian lingkungan, bagaimana social responsibility terkait dengan masyarakat pesisir, kemudian bagaimana untuk memajukan perekonomian. Artinya bahwa sumber daya laut ini kan harusnya sebesar-besarnya memberi kebaikan untuk masyarakat sekitar. Jadi kalau untuk perspektif di Indonesia kira-kira seperti apa sih misalnya? Ada yang mau berikan masukan atau ya boleh Pak Ketut silakan.
If I may adding a little bit about this, referring to preservation, then back in 2000, I'm helping a doctorate in law regarding pecalang, which is Bali security in their village. We have in northern part of Bali, which is Pemutaran and Sumber Kimul, we have pecalang laut. So traditional Balinese security for sea. So because in Bali we have a lot of fishermen who did make live tropical fish, they're using bulk and what do you call like
potassium?
Potassium, yeah. So that pecalang laut security officer, they do catching them. They have actually the government also helping them by giving them a boat. They have boat at that time. I don't know now, but I think that one is a good way to preserve their environment. They're doing a rotation also to Sumber Kimo and then to not Uluwatu, Pulau Menjangan and that
Menjangan Island, yeah.
southern part of Bali. Yeah, I think that one is a good example because in Bali, if we have traditional sanction, I mean punishment, that one is really hard. It's not money, it's not jail, but mostly to custom village regulation. Sometimes they have to, it look like silly. They have to swap the road alongside the village as a result, or they might be punished like you have to give the village 3 sacks of rice. It's a bit like that. That one is really good also. And the other thing, of course, in terms of administrative, they could be banned from the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Ketut. Yes. So regarding the how to protect the ecosystem, how to protect the environment, in Bali there are sea patrol, ya Pak ya. It's sea patrol, the pecalang laut in the coastal areas, mostly in Sumber Kima and the other northern part of Bali, ya Pak.
Yeah.
Northern to west part of Bali, Sumber Kima. I used to work there, Pak, for several years ago.
Yeah.
And the local government, may I say, that prepare kind of social punishment, beside the administrative sanction to those who are outlaw or something like that to the outlaw means by using the bomb or using the cyanide to do the fishing activities. Okay, it's very good input for us. This is regarding the how to keep the environment or the ecosystem sustainable. So, any other thought from others on the social responsibility? This is related to how we keep the community, the local community, benefits from the fisheries activities. Ada pemikiran lain nggak dari teman-teman, dari Bapak Ibu terkait dengan bagaimana sebetulnya kita memastikan bahwa masyarakat di kawasan sekitar itu mendapat manfaat dari kegiatan perikanan tersebut. Ada barangkali yang dari mungkin Ibu Desi, saya ingin dengar dari wilayah Sulawesi Utara, Bu.
Ada beberapa mahasiswa dari Unsrat yang sudah berkecimpung lama di dunia yang sudah di tingkat akhir. Mungkin ada yang bisa kasih masukan. Maria Mandang, salah satu mahasiswa berprestasi dari Fakultas Perikanan dan Ilmu Kelautan. Mungkin ada yang bisa kasih masukan dan nanti saya juga bisa tambahkan. Maria Mandang, boleh mungkin diaktifkan videonya dan bisa kasih pendapat. Kalau mungkin saya bisa tambahkan yang dimaksud dengan Ibu Vini tadi, apakah ada pendapat dari mahasiswa misalnya seperti ini, Maria Mandang, boleh kasih pendapat. Bagaimana pendapat Anda dengan keberlanjutan perikanan itu peran dari masyarakat itu sendiri, dari masyarakat pesisir, bagaimana menjaga kelestarian lingkungan, khususnya ini kelautan dan perikanan untuk menjaga keberlanjutannya. Mungkin bisa dengan bahasa Indonesia, kalau Maria masih malu dengan bahasa Inggris, sebenarnya bisa dengan bahasa Inggris. Maria Mandang, mungkin ada pendapat yang bisa ditambahkan, bagaimana dengan peran masyarakat sehingga keberlanjutan perikanan itu bisa terus dilestarikan. Silakan Maria Mandang.
Selamat pagi semuanya, selamat pagi Inci. Jadi kalau menurut saya, untuk peran dari sosial masyarakat untuk menjaga keseimbangan seperti terkaitkan dengan 3 pilar konsep itu kan sosial, ekonomi, sama sumber daya. Jadi perlu pengetahuan juga dari masyarakat sampai ke masyarakat untuk menjaga sumber daya itu. Jadi seperti yang dikatakan sama Bapak Ketua tadi tentang over penangkapan yang berlebihan. Itu juga mungkin butuh bantuan dari pemerintah seperti NGO sampai ke masyarakat agar bukan cuman hanya menangkap saja, tapi kita perlu untuk mengembangkannya, menjaganya seperti itu.
Dan mungkin kalau bisa saya tambahkan, mohon maaf Mbak Tini,
Iya Bu, silahkan.
memang tidak sempat ikuti dari awal. Saya tadi pas join sudah Pak Patrick. So in my opinion, I think the awareness of a community is more important because I think the government already has the regulation to protect and then to how to encourage or to maintain the resources of the marine and fisheries resources in this case. But I think in Indonesia we have the example of that. For example, in Indonesia, for example, Sasi, in Maluku and in Papua, and also in North Sulawesi, for example, in Talaut. The community have their regulation like Manee, how they protect the fisheries resources, and this kind of regulation that built by themselves is more important to protect these the fisheries and marine resources, I think. Because although the government has the regulation, if the awareness does not come from the community, it's quite difficult. How can we maintain these resources? So I think this is also a very important part is the awareness of the community. Thank you, Mbak Vini.
Thank you, Ibu Desi. Thank you, Maria. This is, yeah, I totally agree with that. That the community knowledge on how to keep the sustainability of the resources are also very important. How we ensure them not to only take the benefit from the resources, but also how to keep the resource there for the next 5, 10, 20, or even 100 years to come. And of course, there are some traditional wisdoms in several areas, in several places, yeah, including Sasi that we know in Maluku area or in more eastern part of the Indonesia, like in Papua and others. As long as the Pecalang Laut in Bali, as the social patrol, sea patrol, community sea patrol. These all are building the awareness of the community and the other stakeholders on how to improve the sustainability of the resources. Thank you very much. So yeah, we have come to the first question with some examples already here. If we still have time, we can go to the next question. Let me check. Oh, we only have 2 minutes to go. So yeah, actually the second question is the stakeholders coordination. As presented by Songlin and also Patrick Cho, that the stakeholders coordination is also as much as important to the towards a better fisheries management. And actually the question is, who do you think that becomes the stakeholders of the capture fisheries in Indonesia? Yeah, and what are their role? Actually, this is some of the points already answered during our discussion, that we have the community here to do the sustainability, and we have the government, Maria, that previously have already mentioned about with the regulation, and also some other parties. Let me check if we still have some more time to go with the discussion. Do we still have time? Yeah, actually, I really would like to explore more on these stakeholders, because as Ibu Desi mentioned that even though there is a regulation developed by the government, but if the community is not having the awareness on how to keep the sustainability, then we cannot go through this regulation. So our time is already up for this discussion. I'm very sorry that we have a very limited time. So I would defer to Dea for the next session with the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mbak Vini. Okay, guys. So now we are going to move to Q&A session. Give me 30 seconds because I need to choose the question. Okay, we have several questions now. We have first from Santi Cadalso from Filipina. There's a question from Facebook platform. The question is, most of fishing habitats are severely damaged today. How can we help to re-establish their habitat? Okay, who wants to help me to answer this question? Which is because I don't know the answer. Maybe Shelly, Patrick, or Sunling?
I'm happy to jump in. Or Songling, go ahead.
Shirley, please.
Okay. you can add on. I'll be quick. I think management has a lot to do with that, and that's why it's so important. They can help to establish marine protected areas where certain areas that need a little bit that are more sensitive or critical habitat can be. There are regulations that can go into effect that will protect those areas from being fished. And so it can help restore that ecosystem and make sure that those species are able to the habitat can rebuild and thrive. And I think that I don't remember if it was Patrick or someone when one of you mentioned the coral triangle, and I think that's a perfect example of that type of management and activity that can help restore destructed habitat.
Anyone want to add something?
Yeah, so our experience is that certainly the marine protected area network would be a useful tool. Some of the network can be strictly protected, ideally for no-take zone, but in reality, we have to allow some of the fishing activities happen, considering the livelihood needs, particularly for coastal communities. So, but at the minimum, we can identify what, in some kind of managed zones, we could identify what fishing operations are acceptable and what are not. For example, bottom trawl. So we probably can have some instead of a no-take zone, we can have a trawl-free zone or no trawl zone instead. And as Shirley indicated, coral reefs, oyster reefs, coastal intertidal mudflats, seagrass bed, mangrove forest, those are all critical coastal habitats offering multiple services on top of seafood production. And those need to deserve special care and attention. Thank you.
Okay, actually there's another question from Santi as well. Members of the community didn't mind how to care the natural resources. Do we have strategies to stop their illegal act and to protect our natural resources? Maybe Patrick can help me to answer this.
Yeah, sure. Hi. So, no, definitely that. I think, and as some of the other people on the Zoom have mentioned, that the community really is like, extremely crucial. And I mean, basically, if that that without engaging the community, that you're setting yourself up for failure in many cases. I guess in terms of how that is, like how we look at doing that is really that a lot of I guess the sort of laws and policies that we have, particularly in the Philippines, are very good. Actually, we have a really good set of laws that help to in terms of our marine protections and fisheries. The problem is in terms of how they're implemented and enforced, and there's usually very little resource from the government to actually do that. So it really, unfortunately, it does come down a lot to the communities and whether or not they understand really the, also like what the laws mean and how they're supposed to benefit from these laws. It's also supporting really communities in the sense that, both in terms of the understanding and also to for them to see the benefit of it ultimately. I like the point raised earlier, really, that I mean, in terms of the sort of looking at traditional knowledge and traditional ways of managing the resource, right? I think that's very applicable also in the Philippines, and and to have people really have a say in being able to preserve the natural resources, not just from the government and not just from the scientists or the NGOs, but also the communities themselves.
Okay, all right. I hope Santi is answer your question. And for the next, we have Dedi Kurniawan posted on Facebook. How much is the ticket for a virtual tour? I think it's
for the virtual tour of the aquarium.
Yeah, I think it's related to the aquarium.
If anything any videos that we have online are absolutely free, and we have our previous program recorded that's available on YouTube as well, and so that's kind of a virtual tour, and that's completely free.
Okay, great. It's free, guys. Next question from Michael Wibowo from Indonesia. Hello, I'm student currently studying marine environment in French. I'd like to ask to Shelley how to estimate catch with current climate situation, the global warming and uncertainty.
So that's a tricky question because with the changing climate and the water temperature changing in certain areas, certain populations of fish are migrating to preferred habitat. And so I think the stage that we're in, we're just having to constantly do more research on abundance numbers, how healthy these populations are. We find out maybe where they have migrated to and start applying some of the research there. So we're in a bit of a transitional stage, and just staying on top of the research that's currently going on is really important. And again, just kind of finding those new trends as species are moving into different areas so that we can continue to research those population numbers.
Okay. I hope it's answer your question, Michelle. We have, I need to say this is last question because we have limited time. And it's coming from Ketut Edi Dasugita from Bali. He asked about the quota in the Philippines on the fishing capture for aquaculture product. I think Patrick can help me to answer this.
Surely, yeah, and maybe I guess Songlin and Shelley might also want to give more insight on this as the like the ones who are more into the technical end. But in the Philippines, right? So I guess more or less you could say that fisheries management, like in terms of what you call harvest controls, right, can more or less be put into two baskets, right? That you have quotas, like you were saying, like these are called output controls, right? So how much output there is from the fishery. There's also another basket called input controls, right? And this basic controls, when, where, and how you fish, right? So looking at things like close seasons, like when you're talking about MPAs and MPA networks, and in this case, maybe also in terms of the kind of gear that you can use, right? Or that you're encouraged to use. So so far in the Philippines, a lot of the work that we've been seeing by the government, for example, by communities, has really been on the side of input controls, right? So in terms of blue swimming crab, we have, for example, right now what's in our law right now is that there is a minimum size of the crab. Indonesia, I believe, has the same. That a crab, when you catch a crab and for the market, that it has to be like this big, like 4 inches plus. So that's a kind of input control. Of course, output controls are generally sort of seen as better, right? If you have the data to support an output control, output control measures, that would actually be better. But they're also, I think more difficult to implement, especially in a country like the Philippines and maybe Indonesia as well, where a lot of the fishery is small scale and like lots of municipal fishery. Like in our case, we're working with 8,000 municipal fishers for the blue crab alone, right? So it'd be very difficult to implement a quota where you have 8,000 people in a very large area who can land and sell anywhere. So right now the focus has been on input controls, but maybe someday we'll get to the point where we can do output as well. But yeah, Shelly and Songlin might have more, might be able to talk more on that.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. Okay, guys, the answer from Patrick will be the end of our session now. So it has been my pleasure to host this event. Thank you for all speakers, audience, and the supporting system. Stay healthy and happy. See you at the next event. I will give it back to James. Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers and moderators for today's
you all.
session.
Bye.
Earlier in the event, we asked our audience members a question. How many live camps do they offer at the Monterey Bay Aquarium? And the correct answer to that is 10. Congratulations goes to Zaki Hutama from YouTube for answering correctly. Thank you to everyone who has participated. Don't forget to tune in next time to get another chance for a shout out from us. Now, you may be wondering, how could I develop an awesome idea for a place like this? It's easy. All you need to do is go to our website at www.atamerica.or.id, select Create a Program, and click Collaborate with us. All event proposals coming to us will be reviewed, and your event might be featured here soon. You can also subscribe to our newsletter for all our weekly updates. That wraps this episode. It's been fun, but we have to say goodbye for now. Follow our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at @ATAmerica for all our fun contents, event updates, and so much more. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. My name is James, and see you all next time at the next EduAmerica TV episode. Goodbye.